It was just after midnight when his phone lit up with an unknown number, and for a moment he thought it must be another spam call. But something in him, maybe instinct, maybe fate, told him to answer. And the moment he heard that trembling voice whisper, I need milk for my baby, please, his whole life shifted without him knowing it. Because the single dad who already struggled to survive had no idea that this one phone call, this one helpless plea from a stranger, was about to change everything he knew about love, destiny, and second chances. Ethan wiped his tired eyes, sitting on the edge of his small, dimly lit living room. His daughter Lily slept on the couch, wrapped in a blanket they both pretended was warm enough. He had spent the entire day working double shifts, delivery in the morning, mechanic shop in the evening, just to earn enough for rent. Midnight was the only time he ever sat still, the only time he allowed himself to breathe. But the call had shaken that silence. The woman's voice was soft but full of fear, her words rushed and broken. My phone showed your number. I think it was a mix-up. I'm sorry, I need milk for my baby and everything is closed and I have no one else to call. Ethan didn't understand at first. Ma'am, I think you dialed the wrong. I know, she cut in quickly, her voice cracking. But I didn't know what else to do. I called every number I could. I'm sorry. I shouldn't bother you. He heard the panic in her voice, the way she tried to swallow her tears. He knew that sound. He had lived that sound. And even though he didn't know her, even though he barely had enough for himself, something inside him wouldn't let him hang up. Where are you? He asked quietly. There was a long pause, as if she didn't expect him to care. Maple Street, Building 14. Ethan looked at Lily sleeping peacefully. He only had one spare bottle of milk left, meant for her morning, but he grabbed his jacket anyway. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The rain had started again, a slow drizzle that made the night colder. Ethan carried the milk inside his worn-out backpack as he walked through the streetlights that flickered like they, too, were tired. The building she mentioned was older, the kind with peeling paint and broken mailboxes. He knocked softly, unsure what kind of person he was about to meet. The door opened only halfway. A young woman stood behind it, her eyes red and swollen, holding a crying infant in her trembling arms. She wasn't dressed like someone used to hardship. Her clothes were neat though slightly wrinkled, her hair messy but not unkempt. She looked like someone pushed into a struggle she wasn't prepared for. You came? She whispered, shocked. Ethan gently handed her the milk. Babies can't wait, he said with a small smile. She stared at him like she didn't know whether to cry harder or thank him. She stepped aside and gestured for him to come in. The apartment was clean but empty. Only a crib, a table, and a single suitcase sat in the room. He could tell she had left somewhere in a hurry. I'm Claire, she finally said as she mixed the milk with practiced hands. I'm sorry for calling you like that. I didn't know who else. It's okay, Ethan replied. I've been there. When my wife passed, Lily was 6 months old. Nights like these, they hit hardest. Claire looked at him with soft surprise. You're raising her alone? He nodded, sitting on the floor near the crib, trying to. Some days succeed, some days fail. She didn't smile. She looked like she understood failure too well. I left my home 2 days ago, she whispered. My husband, he isn't a good man. I came here for safety. I haven't slept properly since. Ethan listened quietly, not judging, not asking for details. Just being there. When the baby finally stopped crying and drank peacefully, Claire sank down beside Ethan on the floor. You must think I'm irresponsible, she murmured. Calling a stranger like that. No, he said softly. I think you're a mother who fought harder than most. She blinked, surprised again by his gentleness. Why are you so kind to me? You don't know who I am. Kindness doesn't need introductions, Ethan replied. It just needs timing. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but fragile. Claire glanced at his clothes. The grease stains from the mechanic shop, the exhaustion on his face. He wasn't rich, he wasn't glamorous, but he was safe. And safety was something she hadn't felt in years. You should at least take cab money, she insisted, handing him a few crumpled bills. Ethan shook his head. Keep it, you'll need it more. Claire stared at him as if trying to memorize the shape of someone who still believed in helping others despite being broken himself. When Ethan stood to leave, she whispered, Please, don't go yet. He froze. Just sit with me a little longer, she said quietly. Tonight feels too heavy to be alone. And so he stayed, unaware that this midnight conversation, born from desperation and fate, was the beginning of a story neither of them saw coming. Ethan didn't remember the last time he sat in silence with someone and didn't feel the need to hide parts of himself. Claire didn't ask personal questions. She didn't judge his worn-out jacket or the tired slump in his shoulders. She simply sat beside him on the floor, her baby finally asleep in her arms, breathing a little steadier than before. The apartment was dim, the only light coming from a small lamp in the corner. Outside, the rain softened into a gentle rhythm, the kind that made the world feel strangely safe and quiet. I don't know why I feel calmer now, Claire whispered after a long pause. Maybe it's because you walked in without asking for anything. Ethan looked down at his hands. Kindness is the only thing I don't have to save money for. She let out a small, shaky laugh, the first hint of warmth he'd heard in her voice. But it faded quickly as she leaned her head back against the wall. My husband. He made me believe I couldn't do anything on my own. He controlled every part of my life. Tonight, when the baby wouldn't stop crying and I asked him for help, he told me to figure it out and turned off his phone. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Anger, maybe. Or empathy. Or both. You did the right thing leaving, he said quietly. Some houses aren't homes. Claire nodded weakly, her eyes shining with exhaustion. I was scared to call anyone I knew. I thought they'd judge me. I didn't think a stranger would be safer than people I trusted. She looked at him again, really looking this time. But you were. Ethan felt a tightness in his throat he didn't expect. I just did what anyone should do. Not anyone, she said firmly. Someone. Before he could respond, Lily's name flashed on his phone screen. Even in her sleep, she had a habit of mumbling, waking for a second, and then curling back into rest. I should go, Ethan said softly. My daughter wakes up if I'm gone too long. Claire hesitated. Can I see her sometime? You talk about her like she's your whole world. She is, Ethan replied with a small smile. And she'd like you? Claire stood slowly, shifting her baby in her arms. Thank you again. I know you didn't come here for anything more than milk, but you brought peace too. Ethan gave a small nod and stepped toward the door. But just as he reached for the handle, Claire suddenly stepped forward. Wait. He turned. She bit her lip, nervous. Can I save your number? Not for emergencies. Just so I don't feel alone in a city full of people. Ethan studied her face, the quiet fear in her eyes, the hope she tried to hide. Yeah, he said. You can. Claire exhaled as if he had lifted something heavy off her chest. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Claire. He stepped into the hallway and walked down the stairs, the cold air brushing against him as he left the building. But something felt different. The night didn't seem as dark, and the rain didn't seem as heavy. He checked his phone once more before heading home. A message had arrived only 10 seconds after he left. Thank you for answering my call. He smiled without realizing it. He replied, anytime. That single word carried more weight than either of them understood. Days passed, and Claire messaged him occasionally, not for help, but to ask how his day was, to tell him hers. To laugh at something silly Lily said in the background of their voice calls. Ethan didn't have many people in his life outside of work and his daughter, but Claire's presence slipped in quietly like light under a door. Sometimes she sent him pictures of her baby smiling. Sometimes he sent her voice notes of Lily babbling words she barely understood. They weren't becoming a couple. They weren't even calling it friendship. It was something soft and fragile, something they didn't want to name yet. One evening, after a tiring shift, Ethan returned home to find a small package sitting near his door. No address. No label. He opened it carefully. Inside was a brand new jacket, warm and sturdy, with a note tucked into the pocket. For the man who carries kindness like a shield. See. Ethan sat down on the doorstep, stunned. No one had given him a gift in years. When he messaged her, she replied instantly. I saw the way you look cold after your night shifts. Consider it a thank you, for that night, for listening, for not walking away. Ethan typed and deleted a dozen responses before writing the truth. Claire, you don't owe me anything. She replied, maybe not. But some people deserve warmth too. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Not because he was confused, but because something inside him finally felt seen, understood, appreciated. 2 weeks later, Claire called him again at night, not trembling, not desperate. Ethan, she said softly, I want you to come over. Not for help this time, I just want you here. He didn't hesitate. When she opened the door, she wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She was smiling, holding her baby, and the apartment looked fuller, safer, like hope had finally found a place to stay. You answered my call that night, Claire whispered, stepping closer. But I think your kindness started something bigger. Ethan looked at her, at the baby, at the peace slowly returning to her life, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something he thought he lost: belonging. Maybe, he said, that call started a new story for both of us. And as she reached for his hand, the story born from midnight fear and unexpected kindness truly began.